Hello, and welcome to Tarot and Attachment. My name is Erin Smith, and I am a professional tarot reader and an associate marriage and family therapist. And so we are having a new moon in the sign of Taurus happening tomorrow. I'm actually recording this on Saturday. And so this is happening on Sunday for those of you who are listening. And today, Saturday, we are experiencing an opposition of Mars to Pluto. Mars in the sign of Leo and Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. And these are some pretty intense archetypal expressions. The volatility of force that Mars can represent, and the cataclysmic shift from one state of being to another that Pluto represents, this sort of death and rebirth cycle, a major transformation. And there's a tension. When we're talking about oppositions, we're talking about a tension that is held between these two archetypal expressions and how those expressions then commingle and the types of experiences that we as human beings might have that reflect some of that archetypal energy. So there is a kind of tension or volatility, a feeling of wanting to take action that is either a catalyst, causes a transformational shift, or that we are an action that we're taking in the face of a transformational shift, which, if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the world, makes sense. It sort of tracks. New moons are usually representative. It's the beginning of a new moon cycle. So it's the dark of the moon. And new moons are always about conjunctions, the sun and the moon conjuncting one another. And it's the reason why it's dark. It's the sun can't reflect, or the moon can't reflect the rays of the sun. So when they're, close together in that sign of Taurus, the moon appears dark to us on Earth. So new moons are often about sort of new beginnings, or, what it is that we are hoping to create or to evolve over the course of this 28-day cycle, where the moon will incrementally grow larger and larger. So again, you can sort of harness the archetypal energy of that which you wish to grow. You plant those seeds during a new moon. And the sign of Taurus is governed by Venus. And so the archetypal themes that are associated with Taurus, which is an earth sign, and Venus, which is about love and beauty and connectivity and nurturance. So, what is it that we wish to materialize that is associated with those qualities? So there's a lot going on energetically. I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is that my question to the cards today is how do we become conscious of these archetypal energies and the way that they are expressing through our lives. And how do we work with them skillfully? I have been feeling rather emotional over the last couple of days and sort of reflecting on the seasons of life that don't the patterns that emerge that are connected to certain seasons of life that I'm really ready to let go of, that I am offering up on the funeral pyre, so to speak. And the pain of remorse that goes along with seeing those patterns clearly and seeing how much chaos or just noticing how certain belief systems, certain behaviors, certain ways of being have been playing out in my life since early childhood. And I can really see at this stage of my life that they don't serve me. They're not reflective of some absolute truth, that there is a possibility for me to engage the world differently that might be more beneficial to me in the long run. And so, again, this idea of really being willing to let all of that go and being able to forgive myself for, I don't know, how long it's taken me to come to the conclusion that it's better to let those things go. I don't know, I'm speaking cryptically, but maybe you have all had experiences similarly where you start to see yourself clearly and you're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's working for me. I'm ready for something different, ready for something new. Willing to transform and to take appropriate action to transform so that I can have a new experience. And with all that said, I'm just going to put this to the cards, put this to spirit. What do we need to know about this process at this time that would be most helpful? So I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to go silent and concentrate while I shuffle. And say a prayer over these cards. Mhm. All right, so there's definitely some of these themes showing up here in the symbolic representation of the cards. So I would say that the Emperor and Judgment very much echo this theme of Mars opposing Pluto. Mars is the god of war, and uh, one of, Aries is the governing, or Mars is the governing planet of Aries, which here we have represented on the Emperor's throne. So the Emperor is really about power, volition, the ability to take action based on uh, assuming the throne in our own lives, essentially saying, I have the power to make choices and to take actions based on how I believe things need to be in order for me to be empowered and to draw from my strengths. And, I think the idea of a benevolent leader, the emperor is the highest law in the land. What he decrees is made so. And, the positive aspect of being a benevolent leader is about being able to take definitive action that you feel like will benefit the most people. The shadow side of the emperor is being a tyrant, making decisions that only serve myself. And, that that usually eventually doesn't work out that well. People rebel. So it's like taking empowered action in the face of or resulting in transformation. Judgment is rebirth. This is very Plutonian in its expression. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. On the death of the old way comes a new, higher formation. And as the world is crumbling, what is going to come in to take its place? How do we envision a way of being empowered, being benevolent in our assertion of what we wish to replace old structures with? And that requires both discernment and a radical shift in perspective, is really what Tarot is saying here. Hanged Man is actually Odin. He is the Norse god of wisdom, and he hangs himself from the tree of life in order to be enlightened, hence the halo. So, in order to have the most enlightened perspective about our situation, about ourselves, about others, about the conditions of life as we know them to be, we have to take everything we think we know and examine it from the opposite perspective. We have to be willing to challenge our firmly entrenched beliefs. What we've always taken for granted as being true. Well, capitalism is the only way to do things. I don't know, is it? Is it really working for us? At least in its evolution, in its late stage expression, how beneficial is that for the vast majority of people? And is it really the only way to do things? And this examining things from multiple perspectives, not just taking one view and accepting that's the way that it is, but to see things differently And nothing gets you to see things differently, quite like hanging upside down, right? Um, Challenging our pet beliefs, taking another view. And so a complementary sort of message here is about practicing discernment with our thoughts, which means that in order to do that, we have to disidentify from these thoughts, from these belief systems. We get into trouble when our thoughts or ideas are enmeshed or entwined with who we think we are. It's the reason why we defend our ideas to death, to the death, right? And anyone challenging my belief feels like a direct attack on my personhood. And of course, that's not true. And if we are practicing discernment, then we are able to gain some distance and have greater objectivity about what we believe to be true and why we have assumed that bias. So, strength is about taming the beast within. It's mastering our minds so that our minds don't master us. And it's an acknowledgement that not everything our heads tell us is helpful or true. Again, it is important to challenge our beliefs, or at least to understand why we have them, where they come from, how they operate in our lives, and to assess whether or not that's the only way to see things or to do things. So this idea of like looking at the narrative in our own minds and being able to determine whether that narrative is true or helpful to believe. And to associate ourselves with the witness of our thoughts rather than the thoughts themselves. That this kind of distancing gives us the ability to challenge our own thinking, to not follow every thought down the rabbit hole of despair, to weigh our options, to practice taking a different view. That these are all ways that we can begin to imagine how we are going to assume a leadership position in our lives, to make solid choices about how we wish to show up in the world and in the face of this intense transformational change. Because the truth is, it's pretty chaotic right now. Like, there's a lot of energy and it hasn't settled. It hasn't found a directional route. In fact, you can think of like, well, wand energy represents life force energy. And it's the passion that we feel about things that allows us to take an action. And that action can be creative or destructive. Again, you know, speaking to Mars, that's a similar thing, right? There's a passion to Mars energy. We can create new possibilities, and often through acts of destruction. So just getting acclimated to this energy of being pulled in multiple directions at once, that's very much the flavor of the Five of Wands. And it's sort of the atmosphere in which we're being called to question our beliefs and take a different view and see what the most skillful response might be to this incredible shifting. And again, to begin to be empowered in our sense of what we wish to create and to get familiar with what it is that sets our soul on fire, that motivates us to take action, that is inspiring. Queens represent mastery and maturity, and they have this very particular creative energy to them, as which is being reiterated here by the wand. The Queen of Wands, it is her superpower to be creative. And, I would say that the Queen of Wands is quite effective at taking that chaotic energy and focusing it in such a way that it feeds her creative process. Um, and, as we're sort of engaging or encountering this energy, to be mindful of all these different pieces and to be centered, to be grounded. One of the things that I associate with strength, or at least the practice that I use to not get captured by my own narrative, is meditation. Is to be in a place where I am watching my thoughts. I'm watching them arise and fall away. Sometimes I'm watching them, chaotically, talk over one another, all the voices, sounding off at once. But again, to watch and not become overly engaged, not needing to fix it or change it, speak back to it, just to listen and to stay grounded and centered in this experience, that there's insight to be had if I am able to disidentify from the thoughts as though they are me. They're not me. It's not who I am. It's activity happening in mental talk space. And it's one way to not get fully discombobulated or distressed over a lot of chaotic energy, and to stay centered and grounded enough to be empowered, to take empowered action. Another piece here is really just about keeping it simple and taking care of ourselves in a good way. I am more likely to be able to show up for others in a good way when I'm tending to my own basic needs. That's the nature of the Six of Pentacles. It's giving from the overflow. So I have more to give if my cup is full. It's a little like putting the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help the person next to you. The Six of Pentacles is an expression of generosity that is centered in self-care. There's a kind of symbiosis here. Just, I can't transmit what I haven't got. And so it is not a selfish act for me to take care of myself in really basic ways. And I usually think of this as like, when you're hungry, you feed yourself nourishing food. When you are tired, you allow yourself to rest. And if we can return to a state of simplicity in terms of our physical needs, that's really what pentacles represent. You can think of pentacles as being associated with Taurus. During this new moon, how can we tend to our needs in order to become aware of what it is, what seeds we wish to plant at this time that will then grow as the moon gets bigger? And finally, I love the Three of Cups. The Three of Cups is about surrounding yourself with like-minded souls, people who emotionally celebrate and support us. This is important, right? To be joyful in our communion or in our communities with others. Um, it helps to not get sucked into the chaos when you feel like you have your friends about you, the people who love you and celebrate you. So I think that the message here is clear, that we are in fact in the midst of a major transformation. And in order to make the most of it, we have to gain perspective about what belief systems we've been operating out of, and to imagine that there might be a new vision, a new way of thinking about these things. and then coming into a sense of our own empowerment in order to implement this new vision and to not get knocked off center when things feel really chaotic, when they feel discombobulating, getting back to basics, right? Like just taking it one step at a time and being nurturing to our bodies and always being in the presence of those that we love, that we emotionally support one another. And in this way, we can be rightly aligned. So I hope that this was a helpful message to you out there, and I am sending you love and nourishment in this time of change, and may you be well. Many blessings.